welcome to the first installment of the Student Government Success Looks Like Me series. Throughout this series, we'll be interviewing CU Denver alumni from diverse backgrounds in order to gain a better understanding of the unique challenges and experiences that these individuals face on their paths to success. I'm Nadia. I'm your host today. I am a student government senator this year, and we have Sam Kim here with us today. Sam, would you mind introducing yourself?
Absolutely. And thank you all for this opportunity. I'm just so impressed with the work that's been put behind this initiative. And I'm so glad that it's grown legs and it's starting to run. And so kudos to this group. So my name is Sam Kim. I serve as the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Student Community at CU Denver. I've been here for about 10 years as a professional. During my time at CU Denver, I pursued my doctorate in education and graduated with that degree in 2017. My favorite childhood food, and hopefully this doesn't sound cliche, is Korean barbecue. Korean barbecue, we loved it growing up as kids, especially when we were able to get it because it was kind of a special treat. But when we did Korean barbecue, Korean short ribs in particular, that's my favorite.
That sounds delicious, and my mouth is watering casually. Well, Success Looks Like Me is as much about identity as it is about success. So could you tell us a little more about what your most salient identities are?
Yeah. Right off the cuff, the things that are very important to me and that I'm proud of is, being a dad, being a husband to an amazing wife. When I look at the different facets of my upbringing, I'm also proud of being an immigrant. Was born in South Korea, immigrated to this country when I was about 2 years old. And so I had the joys of going through all the citizenship processes in that regard. I'm also first generation Korean American, yeah, we'll leave it there, and then I'll wait for the next question.
That's awesome. Well, I appreciate you sharing. Could you tell me more about how your identities have shaped your professional and academic experience?
Yeah, it's interesting you asked that question, Nadia, because I was reflecting on that based on another interaction I had just today, actually, with another colleague. College was instrumental for me because it really helped me flesh out portions of my identity that, unfortunately, I was ashamed of. And when I look back at it, I'm so grateful for my college experience as an undergrad student, as a grad student, and then even as a full-time professional. Because as I was doing this type of work, right, with students and trying to help them figure out, what's their, career path, or, what's their, trajectory, or, what are their, components of their identity. I was able to take that journey with them and really deep dive into areas of my own personal life that either I was afraid to look into, or I was just kind of simply ashamed because society said, hey, you know what, being that is not a popular thing, or being that won't help you get that next job. And so really, college has been instrumental in that regards. And I'm just forever grateful for that.
That's amazing. Do you think that feeling that shame had any effect on that academic experience? Like, were there times where you didn't feel like you belonged at the university or just in the world of academia?
Oh yeah. I mean, just from a physical standpoint, right? When you go into a classroom and 95% of your classmates don't look like you should just start there, right? And I know that's a little bit bold because I think we there's a lot of shared identities. You often wonder, hey, what's going on? Like, why am I this odd person out? Fast forward to, my time at CU Denver, it's still very similar in that regards. It's very rare to come into a meeting where there are other Asian people. And not to say that I don't have supportive colleagues, because that is the complete opposite. I have phenomenal colleagues. But, there are times that give you that moment of pause, right? And to say that, hey, am I doing something wrong? Should I be something else? Which isn't the case now. But there were moments throughout my college career as a student and as a professional that I did question portions of that because of what my environment looked like in the majority, right?
Yeah, of course. And what do you think it was about maybe not just your CU Denver experience, but your college experience in general, that helps you feel more open to your identity and more open to asking those questions to yourself?
It was finding other people that cared and that were willing to help me pursue those other pieces of my identity that were either suppressed within me or that I didn't know about myself. And so when I look back at one of my like critical experiences as an undergrad, I remember one of my buddies at that time who was from Hawaii, and he had literally dragged me into a cultural center
Oh, cool.
and said, "This is a part of who we are as Asian men, as immigrants to this country, being born in other parts of the world." And if it wasn't for individuals like that were not just caring but also concerned about me in terms of my own personal development, I wouldn't be where I am today. And so I'm just so thankful for those individuals who cared and took that risk and invited me to go to a cultural center, invited me to go to a student organization meeting, invited me to take a class that I never would have taken if it wasn't for the encouragement of other people.
That's amazing. So in speaking of these new experiences, and your experiences with the Center for Identity and Inclusion, what other resources do you think you utilized just to get to the place that you are at CU Denver?
There's going to be a bias here, but I say this with all honesty: student life. If it wasn't for my experience as an undergrad in student life, in the student activities office, if it wasn't for my experience interacting with other student government members, I wouldn't be where I am today. It was so instrumental in my development in so many ways. In particular, going completely from the science route, right? I was pre-med, my master's is in public health, going to higher ed. Like it was a complete like 180. And I attribute a lot of that just from my own career perspective and identity with the experiences I gained, just being a part of the student life team, working in that office, doing programs and events, working with student government members to pass, different policies to change, the university landscape for the better for students. Everything that this team is doing right now, I had a say in that as a student, and I'm so grateful for that type of experience.
Yeah, having the opportunity to work in student life myself, I definitely say that I've been having a similar experience, especially in pushing me in the direction of higher ed, even though, I
Right.
started off as med. I started off as a nursing major. Not super sure how I ended up in higher education, but there's something that can be said about working on campus and getting that experience that can really change your outlook on
Absolutely.
things.
Absolutely. Like, if anything, like it should come with the disclaimer, like, beware. If you choose to work in, student life or student government, it could change your trajectory for the better. Caution.
I wish I had that caution. Man, are there so many things that I want to do with my life, and higher ed is now on that list.
Awesome.
Since we're just going to switch gears a little bit, I want to talk a little more about your experience with success. So we kind of touched on this already, but what experiences do you think you had at CU Denver that prepared you for where you are right now, outside of, working on campus and visiting that cultural center?
Oh. If it wasn't for those, for lack of a better term, like those ad hoc committees, where professionals just simply came together, not because of work per se. There was always work involved, right? Especially when you're on campus and, in the office in particular. If it wasn't for those ad hoc committees or those small groups of community members within CU that were just designed to support each other, again, I wouldn't be where I am today. I remember having plenty of conversations with individuals that I don't want to say were like-minded, but maybe shared some of the same challenges as I did. But their walk was very different from mine. But because of those challenges, we're able to come together and figure out ways to support each other. I think those were instrumental in my success. Having those meetings in the hallways with one or two staff members or colleagues or faculty members that you can confide in were really instrumental. And so, when we say, see, Denver's full of caring people, there's a lot of people that care about each other, including students. And if it wasn't for those, ad hoc groups or those small community groups or those, one or two individuals that continue to push me and challenge me, I don't think I would be as successful as I am today with that developmental piece in my journey.
That's amazing. So it sounds like you attribute a lot of your success to just the caring community that there is at CU Denver. What ways did you participate in that community outside of, ad hocs and reaching out to students? How else have you impacted your community?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. Because of those connections that I made, again, it kind of forced me to participate in other facets of my own personal development and really touch on those developmental pieces. And it really challenged me. I mean, to be honest. And so, something that I continued as an undergrad student was to really flesh out my identity as an Asian American. And what does that mean when you have the complex layers of being hetero, being a Christian, being a dad, having, physical privileges, right? I mean, it just gets real complex at that point. And it really pushed me to venture out and join different groups. It really pushed me to venture out and join, different community groups in particular outside of CU. And again, I look back on those experiences now, and as difficult as some of those experiences were, they were instrumental in my development. And I would encourage people to, go out there and just take that risk, if anything, and to participate in facets of life that might be uncomfortable for you, but knowing that, it's going to help you in the long run, to take that risk and participate in that activity.
Yeah, and I mean, I've always been told my whole life that you grow in uncomfortable situations. So could you tell me more about a specific uncomfortable situation that you found yourself in that kind of propelled you into where you are now?
Before I was ready, and being Asian on campus, right? As my years increased at CU Denver, at one point, staff and faculty started to look to me to be that voice and to be that leader. And there was a time in my career where I said, I'm not ready for that. And, people would say, well, you're very personable, you connect with people well, you're willing to be vulnerable. Like, those are the things that, we want our people to be represented in that regards. And I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? And so I will admit from the beginning, like it was something that I wasn't prepared to do. But people were asking me to do it. But the more I spent time in that space, to say that, what, there is an obligation there. Because, going back to my success, because of these individuals, I am who I am today. And to varying degrees, I am successful in my career. Is it my turn now to pay that back? And so that was an easy answer for me, because that answer was, yeah, it was. Like, I have an obligation, even though I'm in a very uncomfortable position to be potentially the voice or the representation of certain groups on campus. And so again, early on, very uncomfortable, but I think over time, as time progressed and I was able to learn more about myself and become more comfortable in who I am, I think that obligation no longer became an obligation. And it was kind of more of a privilege at that point.
Good, I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that switch, because that must have been just a difficult situation to be in. And I think that's something that a lot of, I mean, I'm definitely not ready for it. So, but I think it's a situation that a lot of individuals find themselves in, especially individuals in the BIPOC community, of just representing an entire community, and the toll that really takes on a person. So I'm glad to hear that it turned into a privilege. That's very cool.
And Nadia, just be cautious, because it's when you least expect it. It's when like you're in that weakest moment that you're saying, no way, absolutely not, is when you will be asked to do it.
Of course. That's just kind of how life works.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. So, Sam, we've talked a little bit about the challenges you faced so far in your path to the place that you are now. What has been your greatest success so far?
Ooh, I would say my greatest success so far is establishing some sort of work-life balance. And so that's always been at the front of my mind ever since I was a college student. Because when I was in college as an undergrad student, I worked multiple jobs like most of you are doing now. And that hasn't stopped since, right? And so I was telling my daughter um, when I was getting ready to graduate in 2017 that I've been in college for 17 years. So from the first class I took at a community college to the last class I took in my doctorate program, it was 17 years total. And so that's something that I've been working on. I don't want to say that I've mastered work-life balance, but I want to say that I'm in a better place now than I was when I first started. And I'm very thankful for that because I think that's a critical skill, regardless of whatever field you go into, whatever profession, is understanding that you need to strike that balance between your work responsibilities and your personal life, because I think they're both important. And so figuring out how to do both things well, I think creates longevity for you. What is it, as a professional and as just as an individual with all your responsibilities outside of work. And so it's not flashy, but I'm proud of that.
No need to be flashy because I think that is, at least for me, one of the most important things in my life right now is finding how to balance school and my jobs and the relationships in my life. Like that's a very difficult thing to work on. So I guess my question for you, and I'm sure many people in the audience also have this question, is how did you work on finding that balance?
A lot of trial and error, a lot of failures and successes. And, I was really tested when I was working on my doctorate because at that time I was as interim assistant vice chancellor for two different positions.
Oh,
So
wow.
I was an ABC times two. I had my responsibilities as a grad student at that time, and then I had my responsibilities at home, either it be to my immediate family or my extended family or to my community, right? And so a lot of trial and error, and it required a lot of testing. Does this schedule work? Does that strategy work? Does this work for other people? Because that was important, right? As I was trying to figure out work-life balance, that also includes my loved ones. And so working very closely with my wife to try to figure out, what do you need from me for you to be successful while I'm going to school and working two jobs and things like that. And so trial and error, making a lot of mistakes, but again, not being afraid to try new things, especially strategies that are outside of what you would consider, are your strengths. And so, yeah.
Yeah, working on things that are outside of your strengths, I think, is one of the most important skills that we have. But
It's so hard.
it is hard because, well, it's also something you don't want to talk about. Like, I don't want to talk about the weakest parts of myself, or as much as I would like to work on them, it's definitely something that you have to be really vulnerable about, and that's difficult.
It is, yeah.
So we've also talked about the challenges you faced and your major successes, but what does success look like in general, at least for you?
Yeah, again, hopefully I don't sound cliche when I say this, but for me, I measure my success based on the success of other people. And so, I have my own accomplishments and my accolades, but I also know that I don't live on an island. I live in society with hundreds and thousands and millions of other people. And when I look at my day-to-day responsibilities at CU Denver, right? Working with SGA, for example, I'm successful when SGA is successful. It's not the other way around. And I think a lot of people get that twisted. And for me, the more successful you are, the more successful I can be. And so I think that needs to be reciprocated. And in this day and age, Nadia, there's so much chaos is the word that comes to mind right now. But I would also add that there's a lot of unrest, there's a lot of hurt and pain. And so I think we would be in a better place as a society if we just put aside our own selfish ambitions just for a second and to allow other people to relish in that moment with you, and for them to maybe even take that spotlight, maybe for them to get that acknowledgement, and maybe when you deserved it. We need that right now. We need that healing. And the way I know how to do it is to make sure that other people around me are thriving as it relates to success. And, if they're happy, I'm going to be happy. And it works in both ways, right? When people around me are not doing well, I don't feel good about that. And so there's a part of me that says, hey, as a responsible citizen, I got to do my part to make sure that other people around me are being successful and things are in order for them, because it's important to me. And that's how I define success.
Oh, that's awesome. I think that might be one of the first times that I've heard success defined as something that is collective instead of something that's individualistic, because it sounds like you are successful when the village is successful, when your community is successful, when your loved
Totally.
ones are successful.
And don't get it wrong. Like, one of the great things about the United States of America is it breeds individualism, and there's a place for it. Well, again, if I didn't have those opportunities personally as an individual, like I wouldn't be who I am today, right? And I'm so grateful we're in a country where you can follow what you want to follow. Now, I know it's not easy for everyone in that regards, and I'm not going to be naive to say, you can just be whatever you want to be without any blowback, right? Without any criticism. That's not the case. And so, again, I'm very grateful that, we have that opportunity to be who we want to be. But at the same time, that collective mentality, I think, is also critical. And if anything, there needs to be a balance between those two pieces.
Awesome. Yeah, finding that balance is definitely something I'm sure the audience would love to hear more about, but unfortunately we have ran out of time. So before I let you go, just one more question for you. What is your favorite part about CU Denver? That's hard. I know that's hard.
And I love the students, and let me tell you why. The students that come to CU Denver are the students that need to succeed. And what I mean by that is they don't have other options. In my career, I was very much the underdog. I didn't have a bailout plan. And I'm okay with that because it helped me become who I am today. And those are students that I resonate with. When I look at SGA, these are students that are on their last shot. And I love that about them because that creates grit and perseverance. And so our students are the things that I enjoy the most. And our students are different. I've worked at other institutions. I have colleagues at other institutions. I visited other institutions. They're not like our students at CU Denver. Our students at CU Denver are those underdogs that you want to cheer for, and they're going to win. They're going to be victorious. So that's the best part about CU Denver for me.
Awesome. I love that. We're going to be victorious. We'll keep that in mind. Well, thank you so much for allowing us to interview you. We really appreciate it. And hopefully we get some follow-up questions from our viewers, and we'd love to reach out and learn a little more about you. But thank you again. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.